So I had a great experience today. I went to a store that I haven't been to before. It's called RP Home and Harvest. And the reason why I hesitated to go into this store before, and it's been around for a while, it's over at the Finley Mall, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if it had anything that I would necessarily want or need. It seemed like it had a lot of equipment and a lot of supplies for farmers, those who have livestock, and things along those lines. Happened to see the Winchester sign out in front, so I figured they probably had gun stuff out there as well. What I found out when I went inside was it was a totally different store from what I was expecting. It was an amazing store. I don't know many stores that are like it. I guess the closest thing I can think of would be something like Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop. And it's just right here in Finley. So a really incredible experience that I had inside there. RP Home and Harvest. They had lots of clothes, incredible amounts of clothes, particularly for guys and workers, people that are out in the elements for construction purposes and all that. They had toys for children. They had, as I said, they had like food for livestock. And what I really didn't expect, though, they had also an area for your pets, for feeding your pets, toys for pets, and so on. They had outdoor sportsy sorts of stuff at this store. It was they even had food at this store. Now, they didn't have refrigerated food like fresh meat or anything like that, but the types of stuff that you would buy, like canned goods, things along those lines. Also, I happen to notice that they had Mike Lindell's My Pillow out there. They had Black Rifle Coffee out there. They had, I'm trying to think of a couple other things. Regardless, you could tell that these people have conservative values who created this place. And so I very much appreciated what they had on display. I guess it's kind of a mixture between, let's see here, trying to think of some stories. Let's say it's a mixture between Bass Pro Shop, Hobby Lobby, and PetSmart, more or less. So really incredible store, and I highly encourage you to check it out if you haven't made it over there already. I could have spent hours looking around at the different options that they had, and it's not like they're a sponsor or anything. I just thought that I'd make you all aware of its existence, and if you haven't been there, to check it out. This is the Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng. I look very forward to tonight's episode as we will be talking about something near and dear to my heart tonight. Before getting into it, I would like to preface it with a movie that I really like because it does actually relate, and it's a movie called Shin Godzilla, which, by the way, I took time a while back to rank all of the Godzilla movies in relation to how much I like them. And Shin Godzilla happened to be number 3 on the list, meaning that it's really, really high up there, and I would say it's probably still there even after the last movie, Godzilla vs. Kong, just came out last year, I believe. But Shin Godzilla is number 3 on my list, and that is because it is a very uniquely made movie. And regardless of the monster and what all the people are doing to figure out how to defeat the monster, that there's a lot of political humor inside of it. And something that I found odd, I guess I can say, I appreciate the humor, don't get me wrong, but sort of the point of what it was showing, it was more or less a political commentary on how Japan is not equipped to face a natural disaster, how they take lots of time because they do not have a good bureaucratic system. And so it was actually a pro-bureaucracy sort of movie, and they even pointed toward America's bureaucracy to say, you see, they get things done because they have bureaucrats in place to be able to take care of natural disasters, like the EPA, for instance. Well, today we are talking about bureaucracies, we are talking about government agencies, because we are in talks, I should say. I'm not talking about this in depth tonight, but about the January 6th hearings that are coming up. And to tell the truth, what we are finding out is that these FBI people are really, really scary. Oh, I almost forgot the whole point of even bringing up the FBI tonight is because of a post that Franklin Graham made, and I have actually put off talking about this until I saw this post because I felt like it was missing some details. So, a couple days ago, I happened to see a news story about a man who is pro-life, who claimed to have been, his wife rather, claimed that the FBI, a whole bunch of FBI agents, I believe like 20 or so FBI agents, showed up at their home, broke into their house, and arrested her husband at gunpoint. Their claim was that he violently assaulted a man outside of an abortion clinic. And I thought that sounded very weird. The way they made him sound was like an angry person who was causing trouble. He indeed was protesting at this abortion clinic, so don't get that part wrong there. He was indeed protesting at this abortion clinic, but there were some details that were missing inside of it. First of all, the man had his 12-year-old boy there. And so his 12-year-old boy was along with him at this protest, which I don't think is necessarily a bad practice. They need to see what this sort of environment is like. And there is a man, I don't know if he worked inside the clinic or what. This is what Billy Graham happened to reveal. Not Billy Graham, Franklin Graham happened to reveal. And that was that this person who was either for the clinic or defending abortion or whatever started saying vulgar things towards this man's 12-year-old son. And the man tried to dissuade him from doing that, and not even violently at first. This man continued to be belligerent, he continued to be vulgar, and then eventually he started to take steps toward this man's 12-year-old son. At this point, this gentleman wasn't going to take it anymore, so he stepped up to him and pushed him down. The man fell, and that qualifies as assault, apparently. Now, I don't think you should be making threatening gestures toward children. That man got lucky because if he would have done something to that child, first of all, the father would have pounded him. I have no doubt about that. But second of all, he had been facing legal consequences as well. Nonetheless, I think that the father in that case did the right thing. But even if that wasn't the case, let's say that he happened to punch the guy or something, and that the 12-year-old son had nothing to do with his cause. Why is the FBI showing up at his doorsteps with guns drawn? Now, I know that there's speculation as to whether that is true or not. His wife / the boy's mother happened to make that claim. The FBI said, no, we didn't do that. We came to the house and we knocked and we were polite and he came with us willfully. Well, I don't doubt that he came with them willfully necessarily. But I do question their story. And ever since his wife has been asked to comment any further, she hasn't said anything, which, by the way, is wise. A reason why it is wise, and I've told my family this, and I encourage you as listeners, if you are ever approached by the FBI, here's what you tell them. I will not talk to you unless I have a lawyer, period. And just leave it at that. And if you have to repeat it over and over and over, do it that way. They might arrest you anyway because they're dirty and slimy and all that. And I have no problem saying that. There's a point in time where people were still defending the FBI. But let me make this point. Why do you say that to the FBI if they ever approach you for questioning? And it doesn't matter whether you're genuinely being helpful or not. You tell them that you do not talk to them unless you have a lawyer, because the FBI can lie to you, but you can't lie to the FBI. The FBI can lie to you, but you can't lie to the FBI. Meaning that you could be committing I don't know how high of a crime by quote unquote lying to the FBI, but you can get in very big trouble. They have locked people away for it. And I'm not even talking about lying to them. I'm talking about merely being inconsistent with your answers to them. They will ask the same question several different ways to see if you're inconsistent, and if even slightly. If you said the first time they asked you, so what did you eat for lunch 2 weeks ago? And on Wednesday at noon, you say, let me think. What did I have for lunch 2 weeks ago on Wednesday at noon? I think that I had pepperoni pizza, I think. Where from? Oh, it was Can't remember. I think Domino's. Okay, so that's your first answer, and then they get around to, we happen to hear you're a big fan of pizza, right? So every Wednesday you have pizza for lunch. Do you happen to remember where it was you had pizza 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday? You're like, oh my goodness, oh shoot, I do not remember. Was it Pizza Hut? I think it was Pizza Hut. I'm pretty sure it's Pizza Hut. Uh-oh, guess what you just did? You just lied to the FBI. Was it intentional? No, not at all. But that is what happened to General Flynn. He simply displayed a slight degree of inconsistency in his answer, and he paid the price for it. Because these people are not honest. They are politically motivated, politically driven. They are out to get people. And they are willing to do whatever they need to, by the way, to defend their reputation. So they're going to stick to their guns when they charge you with something. I don't even know how this all works. But that is a display. That's what I really think is coming out right now. More and more. We used to think, and so many people have defended the FBI for years and years and years, and now it's turning up. We have every reason to be skeptical of the FBI because they are slimy. You remember when Jim Comey briefly worked for Donald Trump when he got elected as president, and I'm trying to remember exactly his role but Jim Comey was with the FBI. I believe that he was the head of the FBI, and it turned out that I don't want to go too much into that. It's been so long. I can't even remember what exactly he did. I just remember there was a lot of inconsistencies inside of his answers, that he was actually feeding outside sources information. He was leaking information that was confidential to the press, and they were publishing it, which is a huge no-no, which means that he should have been fired way before Donald Trump actually did fire him. But he kept him around because this whole Russian collusion scandal that went on. And FBI agents during that time, again, going back to the Russian collusion thing, I know I've done this before. I remember there were interviews with FBI agents. Remember what they were saying was that Russia interfered with the 2016 election, right? And they would have FBI agents on television being interviewed, and they would ask them what sort of evidence that they had that FBI had colluded with Russia. And they would say something along the lines of, well, we don't really have any evidence right now. That's why we're doing the investigation, which, by the way, is very bizarre because normally you don't do an investigation unless there's some degree of evidence that something happened. But they would say something along those lines, and then the interviewer would come back, did Russia interfere with the 2016 election? Oh, yeah, we know for a fact that they interfered with the 2016 election. We just have to find out how. It's like, come on. Is that real? And the whole point was they were going to start digging into the personal life of Donald Trump until they could finally pinpoint some sort of crime against him. It was going to be an ongoing investigation. And even though I am not happy with Bill Barr right now, that regardless of that, he actually did come in and save the day to Donald Trump's presidency, even though the Democrats continue to mess up his presidency, because he finally put an end to this never-ending investigation that was going on that was absolutely baseless in every way. So the FBI, they are corrupt to the high heavens. You can look up all sorts of stories about their corruption, about the wicked things, yes, wicked things that they have done in the past to innocent people. So once again, FBI ever confronts you, you simply say, I will not talk to you unless I have a lawyer. And just leave it at that. Don't give them any other information. Don't talk to them. Don't put yourself in a situation where they can accuse you of lying to them, because they will make sure to get you. So what other government agencies are corrupt? Am I just pulling this out of nowhere? Well, you know what? FBI still. So January 6th. This continues to get worse and worse and worse with the FBI. Because the FBI, it is suspected, had agents situated throughout the January 6th protests. And there is even speculation, I should say. I don't know if there's proof, but there's definitely speculation, strong speculation, that some of these FBI agents may have provoked other protesters to enter into the Capitol building. There is video evidence that one of the people who was provoking the crowd to go into the Capitol building, there's video evidence of this gentleman who did that, and then there was somebody inside the video that he whispered to and directed him toward the Capitol building as well. Again, some sort of weird plot that they had going on, and this is what they're calling the insurrection right here. And by the way, my source for this would be Louder with Crowder. He's one of the few sources that I feel like I can trust anymore when it comes to corroborating this evidence, because I know they're very meticulous in giving out their information and dispensing information, I should say. And this gentleman who was provoking everyone to storm the Capitol building, all of a sudden, his friend that he had whispered to was arrested, charged, and he is put away for however long. Actually, I don't even know if they actually brought any charges against him. They just locked him up without bail. And this gentleman who was actually doing the provoking of the crowds and telling them to storm the Capitol, he was arrested, but then his status currently is that they are still investigating him. So he's not locked up or anything. They're still, quote unquote, investigating him. And when he's been approached on his role in January 6th and his possibly being an FBI agent, he just simply doesn't comment at all. So something very bizarre going on there, because he's not facing any repercussions, even though he was the provocateur. Explain that exactly. So there absolutely were, by the way, government agents throughout the crowd. And that's not too unusual. You kind of expect that. But what I kind of suspect right there is that it was somewhat of a sting operation. I don't want to get too much into conspiracy right here because I really don't know. But this would not be something new for the FBI. They have actually set people up in the past, and it is well documented. They have thrown people away. They have withheld evidence from courts, and it resulted in innocent people going away for a very long time, for years and years and years, some of them even committing suicide when they're in prison, and they had never done anything wrong to begin with. So it's not outside the purview of the FBI to do something like that. So the FBI, like I said, they're absolutely slimy. Government agents, I would say they're pretty much all corrupt at this point. By the way, do you remember the CDC? How they are essentially responsible for the government lockdowns. Yes, the government actually did do the locking down. They did not have to heed the word of the CDC, but their excuse was, well, the CDC is saying that we need a lockdown. The CDC is saying we need masks. The CDC is saying that we need vaccines. The CDC was responsible for that. And I believe that's the organization that Fauci was in charge of, was the CDC. And so they created all of this pain for what? They were responsible for censoring voices on social media, for providing information to social media to silence people that were against their assessment of what the lockdowns were all about the severity of the disease or the best ways to treat it. No, they had one narrative. They weren't going to bend from it. They weren't going to take outside opinions. They weren't going to take differing opinions, even though we have learned so much about this disease in this past year and have even developed new treatments to take care of it better than, dare I say, any of the other remedies we've come up with in the past could have done. Do you remember the IRS back in 2012? And this was a big deal because this was Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. And I have said before that even though Barack Obama probably would have thwacked Mitt Romney one way or the other, regardless of what sort of dirty tactics he used, the IRS targeted conservative nonprofits and tried to prevent them from being able to form. So conservative nonprofit, a conservative organization applying for nonprofit status, and it would be run through the ringer or absolutely denied for the sake that the IRS did not. And again, it was very clear it was targeted against conservatives, and it was a very big deal back when it happened. They essentially got a slap on the wrist, and it was so they could not organize effectively to try to defeat Barack Obama in the 2012 election, and it was an effective tactic. Now, Barack Obama, of course, denies that he had any knowledge of it whatsoever, which he very well may not have had any sort of knowledge of it, but these people are all of a like mentality. They're all on the same page when it comes to this sort of stuff. So even though that he might not have known, they were indeed doing his bidding nonetheless. Going back to the CDC, the type of pain that they brought upon the American people, the mask mandates. When we talk about the mask mandates, those got so severe you couldn't even go to a store without being required to wear a mask. And I remember this video. This wasn't a store. This was actually an outside sporting event. And technically, you don't have to have a mask outside during this time. But they're at an outdoor sporting event. This mother was watching their child compete in a track meet, and this officer approached her and said, "Hey, you aren't wearing a mask," and demanded that she put a mask on. She would not put on a mask, so what did he do? He pulled out his taser and shot her, his stun gun, and he shot her with it and forced her. I don't think that she complied ultimately. I think that she was actually arrested at the track meet. So again, all this pain caused because of an agenda that had to be achieved. And the same thing with the IRS. They have absolutely politicized government agencies. I would contest that the Postal Service, even in the 2020 election, were corrupt in that sort of way as well. I'm not going to go into details, but I think that it's highly suspect with all the mail-in ballots and everything that happened. That I think that you have to be a little bit suspicious of what exactly happened with the Postal Service. Not that they're the most reliable organization anyway. You have the EPA. The EPA has been pushing global warming, climate change. I can't remember what they call it these days, but they keep on moving the goalposts with it. They keep on manipulating data. They keep on saying that more scientists are all in with the idea of catastrophic climate change than what really do sign on to it. If you haven't noticed, the whole theme of these government organizations in relation to the people is all agenda driven. It's all agenda based. They all have a mode of operations. They all have a goal they want to achieve, and they are essentially working together with it. The EPA, even though they're known to be the ones who are trying to keep the environment clean, and they may have done that for a while, they are probably the most pro-communist organization that is in our government right now, because the narrative that they push is that we must save planet Earth. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have to come together. We have to think alike. We have to recycle. We have to make sure to drive cars that don't use fossil fuels. We have to make sure that we don't use plastic straws, all sorts of crazy things. We have to make sure that we turn our thermostats up to 80 degrees in the summer and down to 60 degrees in the winter. So all of these odd expectations, and the list goes on and on and on as far as what they want to achieve. But what it boils down to is that they really don't believe that you should be allowed to own your own property, that you should have your own land and your own house, but rather the government should be the overlords, the overseers of all these things. So that way, if you abuse the land or abuse your property, then therefore they should be allowed to take it away from you. Control. That's what they're looking for, and that is their agenda ultimately. And one of the articles I read today said that the FBI is becoming like Biden's secret police, his special secret police to be able to attack his political opponents, which is very much the truth. We remember the Mar-a-Lago raid, and again, what we are really learning from this is that just government agencies at this point are just so slimy. What about the Board of Education? What is going on with them? It used to just be this idea of Common Core, but now they have a deeper, darker, way more sinister plan for your children by indoctrinating them. And it really is for political purposes in part, but I fear that it's even worse than just merely for political purposes, as children are just being crazy sexualized at a very young age, and it's just not necessary. So, government agencies, am I for them or am I against them? I am against these government agencies. I think that if they operate properly, that's fantastic. Oh my goodness, I almost skipped over one that is very important as well. This goes back to the FBI once again. Sorry, I have to get as many plugs in the FBI as I possibly can right now. And I apologize, this is all kind of out of order. It's kind of scatterbrained to some degree. But the FBI, you'll remember the lockdowns. Once again, going back to the lockdowns, so FBI, CDC, all these organizations involved in these lockdowns. But during the lockdowns, the state of Michigan had some of the strictest regulations. I don't think they're necessarily laws, but regulations prohibiting people from going outside their homes and requiring them to wear masks, and when the time came to get vaccinated. And there arose this plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer to get revenge on her lockdowns. And she was absolutely brutal, by the way. And she would send people to young people with mental disorders to nursing homes with old people who, by the way, were very susceptible to coronavirus. One of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable group to the coronavirus. And there were instances where these young people with mental disorders ended up fighting these elderly people. And I think this was in Michigan where it happened, where one young person beat up this older person, and that didn't kill him or anything, but it set him into a state of depression, and he basically went to his room and he died. That's what happened. So Governor Whitmer was a horrible person. What came was this plot to kidnap her, and it was a very serious ordeal. What I didn't know back then was that 12 of the people planning this plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer, guess what government agency they were involved with? The FBI. So they have become world-class provocateurs. They are sting artists. So they're not just catching people in the act. They are actually creating scenarios where they can get you, which is frightening. And it sounds like a movie, for crying out loud. It sounds like it can't possibly be true, but it is. I mean, these people stormed into a person's home just for opposing somebody who, at an abortion clinic, who, by the way, tried to aggressively approach his 12-year-old son. And they came into this man's home in front of all of his children, held him at gunpoint in an attempt to intimidate him and his wife and his kids and anybody else. By the way, this isn't just a message to his family. This is a message to everybody's family. If you dare oppose their agenda, they will come after you in some way or another. So let's be sober-minded in approaching these people. Let's pray that we are able to elect leaders who will take care of these problems, because that is what needs to happen. I don't think it's beyond repair, but it is really bad. Let's pray that we're able to have leaders that are able to take care of these problems. Let's even pray for that guy that's in the White House, Joe Biden, that he would just have a change of heart, that he actually would get control of his mind and of his regime, so that they will bring about the proper change, because we just need a total overhaul right now. And the government bureaucracy just really needs cut down to a level that it's manageable, if not flat out done away with. At this point, I don't know there's a government agency that is not corrupted, and I think that we just need to scrap the whole thing. That's not going to happen anytime soon, but something needs to be done about it to take power away from them. Make sure that they are not the ones who are determining who can live freely and who cannot live freely. Once again, my name is Bill Seng. This is the Bill Seng Podcast. And I hope this one didn't creep you out too much. I hope I didn't sound too crazy in talking about these things. Again, I am a little bit scatterbrained tonight as I'm going through all these things, as there's an awful lot of information to cover on this topic. And you can go categorically, organization by organization by organization, to figure out how much they have done that has been nefarious. But again, get on to Rumble, get on to YouTube, get on to Buzzsprout, like, share, and subscribe to this. Make sure to share it with your friends so they can hear about it too. And let's do great things together. Again, Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng, and you have a good day.